Greetings and welcome to the Homeschooling Option. I'm Mark Schneider, the founder of Protect Our Kids, where our mission is to inform parents and other concerned citizens about the mounting threats to our children's welfare in the public school system. One of the ways to shield your children from these threats, and indeed the gold standard for increasing numbers of parents, is through homeschooling. If you're here, then you're likely already aware of the mounting concerns to our kids through the public schools, either through comprehensive sexuality education, critical theory, or historical revisionism. And if you're not familiar with these terms, I do invite you to visit our website or Facebook page to learn about them. You can also watch our videos or sign up for one of our webinars. I also encourage you to subscribe to our site to stay informed. Because having studied these threats extensively, POK has come to the sad but unavoidable conclusion that the only sure remedy to protect your children is to remove them from the public school system entirely. John Adams, our nation's second president, warned, "Public virtue cannot exist in a nation without private virtue, and public virtue is the only foundation of republics." But unfortunately, our public schools are working against both public and private virtue. In their book, Get Out Now by Mary Rice Hasson and Teresa Farnan, which I urge every parent with a child in the public school system to read, the authors were forced to conclude, the public schools with their vast political and bureaucratic machinery are beyond reform. That doesn't mean that persons of goodwill should not offer themselves up as missionaries of truth and goodness and beauty to teach there. But we would be quite mad to send our children there. We send missionaries to cannibals. We do not serve cannibals, our boys and girls. So this leaves two options, private and homeschooling. By the way, the information presented here is also available on our website under the Parents menu, and we're adding to it all the time, so you should check back for updates. Regarding the legal alternatives to the public schools, the laws are unique to the jurisdiction and state you live in. Because it's the largest state, I'm going to be talking about the laws here in California. To find out what the legal requirements are for other states, please visit the legal page at the Homeschool Legal Defense Association and click on the state where you live. But aside from the legal specifics, all the information provided here is applicable no matter where you live. So with that, let's begin. In California, there's three legal options from the conventional public schools: charter schools, private tutoring, and private schools. But private schools in California and in many other states come in several different flavors. Of course, what we think of as the conventional private schools, but also homeschools and what are called private satellite programs, or PSPs. Under California's education code, all children between the ages of 6 and 18 must attend a full-time public school unless exempted. But children who are being instructed in a private full-time day school by persons capable of teaching, notice it doesn't say credentialed, shall be exempted. Not may be exempted, shall be exempted. Now, there are some other requirements as well, such as the instruction must be taught in English, at least most of it, that it offer instruction in the several branches of study that are also required in the public schools, and that you keep a record of attendance. But before we explore this further, let's briefly address the other options. Families can enroll in a public charter school or independent study program, what's known as an ISP. Charter schools are public schools, but they're unique because they can act independent of school districts and local boards. The California Department of Education defines charter schools as a public school that provides instruction in any combination of grades, kindergarten through grade 12. The California Attorney General reiterates that charter schools are a class of public schools. Why is this important to note? Because at least in California, charters are not immune from having to teach comprehensive sexuality education, just like in the public schools. In fact, in 2018, then Governor Brown signed into law AB 2601, which extended the sex ed mandate to all charter schools. But there are still significant differences between charters and regular public schools. First, charters are independent from local school district administration, so there's very little regulation by school officials or unions. They offer flexible curriculums, and they can specialize, like in science, technology, engineering, and math, what's known as STEM programs, or sports, theater, classical education. Because charters can, in fact, in many respects behave just like a private school, parents should ask, are you a private school or a public charter? And if it's a charter, just know that they're required to comply with California's sex ed laws. But for sure, charters can be a great option for parents for whom private and homeschooling are just not feasible. If that's your situation, do look around. In Orange County, one great example of a charter is the OC Classical Academy. The reason it's so great is that it follows the Hillsdale College model and offers a classical education where the focus is on building moral character and civic virtue. If you're not familiar with Hillsdale, they're modeled after a biblical worldview and strongly rooted in the classics of what's traditionally defined Western civilization. If you're interested in a Hillsdale-based charter, then visit their website to see what's available in your area. And if you don't find one, maybe you can contact Hillsdale and convince them to work with you to establish one. What about option 2, private tutoring from a credentialed teacher? Well, if you have the means, you can certainly hire a tutor or tutors who have a valid teaching credential for the grades and subjects being taught. There are lots of substitute teachers out there and retired teachers who keep their licenses active. If you have the financial means, you can certainly hire one or more of these to teach your children apart from the public school. But we're really here to talk about the third option, which is to establish a private school in your own home, otherwise known as a homeschool. Again, in California and in many other states, children enrolled in a private school, even if home-based, are exempt from attending a public school. Let's talk more about what this entails. According to Merriam-Webster's, the definition of a homeschool is simply to teach school subjects to one's own children at home. Well, with all due respect, here's a more accurate, modern, and broader definition of homeschooling, which is parents choosing to educate their children from a home base. Why redefine the term? Well, as the number of homeschoolers has grown, at last count to well over 2 million, parents have discovered many different approaches to home education. Instead of teaching all subjects at home, many families also use outside resources, and this is especially true in the upper grades. Why are increasing numbers of parents choosing to homeschool? Let's talk about the most commonly cited reasons, and there are 4. Academics. This may be counterintuitive, but for many parents, it's all about academic excellence. Education shouldn't be a one-size-fits-all enterprise. Every child is different, and homeschooling provides the flexibility to customize your child's educational experience. You may have a gifted learner at home, or a special needs learner, a child who wants to take a wider breadth of courses, or dig deep in subjects not available through the public school system. As a homeschooling parent, you are able to choose the path that offers the best solution to your child's particular need. How successful are homeschoolers in academics? Well, the National Home Education Research Institute did a study which demonstrated that home-educated students typically score 15 to 30 percentile points above their public school peers on standardized tests. And note, these scores were achieved regardless of their parents' level of formal education or their family's household income. Colleges have certainly taken notice of this fact. Many are now actively recruiting homeschooled students, including MIT, Harvard, Stanford, and Duke, just to name a few. Another reason parents choose to homeschool their children concerns socialization. What about socialization? This is usually the first question people leery about homeschooling ask. Well, the answer is it's because we're looking for healthy socialization that more and more parents have chosen to homeschool. Think about it. Rather than interacting for the majority of a child's day with kids solely in their own peer group, or with agenda-driven school officials, homeschoolers learn to engage with caring and responsible people of all ages and backgrounds. The majority of homeschool students regularly participate in a variety of school activities in their community. You can find them getting involved with field trips, scouting, church ministries, sports teams, volunteer organizations, speech and debate clubs, political campaigns, and more. Homeschoolers are everywhere, and they form very active local, community, and state groups. There's no end to the opportunities to have your kids involved with others, but others who are working to support your values, not to secretly undermine them. The truth is, new homeschooling families are often surprised when they find themselves having to limit the many engagement opportunities being offered to them. Now, of course, parents cannot and should not completely try and insulate their children from the realities of society, but it is every parent's responsibility to ensure that their kids are being raised with positive and healthy values, and homeschooling ensures that that can be accomplished more than any other option. Another reason parents choose to homeschool involves safety, and not just physical, but perhaps even more importantly, psychological and spiritual. The public schools present threats to all three through things like physical violence, bullying, comprehensive sexuality education, critical race theory, on-campus drugs, or a highly inappropriate and corrosive worldview. And finally, another major reason parents choose to homeschool their children is to ensure that their kids are receiving a faith-based education. If you're a parent who happens to believe that gender is binary and objectively known, then under California's comprehensive sexuality education laws, your views are now considered, quote, gender stereotypes, and may even be a sign of, quote, spiritual abuse. Both of these concepts are now commonly taught in California's public schools, starting in grade school. Why choose to homeschool? The bottom line is parental rights and responsibilities. Parents are the best advocates for their child's educational journey. Now, before we leave the why homeschool topic, you should know that many homeschooled families report that it was actually easier than public school. No more worrying about what your kids are being exposed to, arbitrary school schedules, unneeded and unproductive homework assignments, and no more parents having to sift through backpacks for important notification. Homeschooling allows for academic flexibility. It allows your student to spend more time on areas that are challenging and less on areas that are already strengths. Children have more free time to pursue a hobby, interests, musical instruments, sports, theater, etc. The parent is in charge of setting academic schedules now, not an inflexible school administrator. And many businesses are now offering steep discounts to things like theme parks, museums, and other services for homeschooling families. Okay, what's involved in actually establishing a homeschool? In California and other states, parents must file what's known as a private school affidavit, or PSA. But this is not a big deal. It takes about 20 minutes and is done every October. What kinds of information does California's PSA ask for? Well, the kinds of things that you would expect. The name of the school, the names of the administrators and teachers, which is usually the parents, the grades of instruction being offered for that term, the range of the students and their ages, the tax status of the school if you have one. And once you're finished, you just simply sign electronically, send it along, and make a copy for yourself. The next step is record keeping. Well, what does this look like? Again, this isn't rocket science, but simply keeping track, usually in a binder or file, of things like a copy of the PSA, an attendance record, the course of study being offered that year, health immunization records or waivers, and teaching records which offer evidence of instruction. And if you need help, there's plenty of organizations already set up to come alongside you for record keeping, like HSLDA. But most parents don't have any problem dealing with this. Here's an actual attendance record that our family used for our kids. Very simple matrix that served its purpose well. Here's two other examples from our family's experience of a course of study record. The one on the left was for grade school, while the one on the right was for my son during high school. Again, very simple. Of course, for each grade or class, you're going to have to choose a curriculum. But you should know that these are widely available. Homeschoolers not only have access to the same curriculum taught at public and most private schools, they also have access to curricula created especially for home educators. Excellent content, often with the ability to use across multiple grade levels. And best of all, many of these are free. The Oklahoma Book Shack mails out donated curricula to families who submit written requests. Two other providers, Easy Peasy and All-in-One Homeschool, offer similar kinds of services. Families may also choose to enroll in outside courses. These may meet once a week, twice a week, 3 times a week. Some of these use traditional textbooks, some use hands-on approaches, and others use the Socratic method of discussion. There's also a wide assortment of online courses available. Who hasn't heard of the Khan Academy? But this is just one of hundreds of online teaching venues now available. Some in real time, most self-paced. What about co-ops? Well, this stands for cooperatives and involves a group of families who get together to share in the work of teaching different subjects and planning activities together. These are also known today as teaching pods. As we discussed, personal tutoring is also an option, either in person or online. And finally, for high schoolers, dual enrollment is a fantastic option, especially where community colleges exist. Like our kids, many homeschooled kids take classes at community college while they're still in high school, thereby earning both high school credit and college credit at the same time. The fourth step is to get support. Most families want and need support, and the best way to receive it is to connect with one or more of the many homeschool groups available in your area. Here in California, we're blessed with an abundance of resources, so please know that you do not have to go it alone, and you shouldn't. Through the years, our family was active in 2 different homeschooling groups, each with between 50 and 100 plus families. We also connected with other homeschoolers through our local church, a speech and debate league, and many other extracurricular activities. If you're not sure where to start, talk to families in your church. Homeschool organizations also have directories on their websites where you can search for a group in your area. But the following are must resources for homeschoolers. HSLDA, the gold standard of homeschool support organizations. Among other things, they provide legal protection and insurance for homeschooling families, community, record planners, and curriculum helps, and all of this for a very nominal fee. Last time I checked, about around $11 a month. The Christian Home Educators Association is one of the oldest and most established homeschooling support groups in existence. Check out their website and you're going to be amazed at the resources that they make available there. Another great resource is the Homeschooling Mom. They have a quick start guide to homeschooling that is well worth the look. But they also provide help choosing curriculums, downloading lesson plans, and connecting with local homeschool groups. And once conditions on the ground allow, a must for interested homeschoolers and veterans alike is to attend a homeschool convention. This is a great way to gather information, network with other families, and attend workshops where veteran homeschoolers share their collective wisdom. You can also visit an exhibit hall or halls to check out the prodigious curriculums available there and programs. Now, there are two major conventions you'll want to check into. The first is the Great Homeschool Convention that is now offered in at least 7 states and expanding all the time. The second is the Christian Home Educators Association Convention, which is usually held each summer, this year at the Anaheim Convention Center. So having heard all this, what's the next step? Where do you start? 3 things, starting with word of mouth. Talk to people who are already homeschooling. They won't be hard to find. Talking to homeschool veterans is an indispensable source of knowledge and can also be very encouraging. Second, go online. Visit the myriad of online resources available to educate yourself and get more comfortable. And third, conventions. As conditions allow, plan on attending one or more of these. You'll be blown away by the sophistication of homeschoolers and the networks available to them. Now, another great homeschooling option, if available in your area, is going with a private school satellite, or PSP. A PSB is a group or pod of homeschooling families that come together in common cause. PSBs may be comprised entirely of home educators, or it may be an extension program of a campus-based private school. PSBs provide administrative support and covering for your family in California and other states which recognize them. PSBs are also known as umbrella programs. They offer many advantages. They do the private school affidavit for you. They provide record keeping, establish a teaching curriculum, issue diplomas, and some, if they're large enough, specializes, like in STEM programs, sports, music, etc. The disadvantage is most of these are fee-based, but when you compare that to the normal private school tuition, the fee is incredibly reasonable, even nominal. So please take the time to check into that if that makes sense for your family. Okay, well, we've covered a lot of information in a very short period of time. But to summarize, the reason to homeschool is to secure an improved academic experience for your child. Homeschooling affords parents the opportunity to introduce academic excellence and reestablish their influence in their child's life. In 1972, in the case of Wisconsin v. Yoder, the Supreme Court ruled that the right of a parent to control the upbringing of his child is fundamental. But unfortunately, the weight of that opinion has been whittled away over the years. More recently, in 2005, the Ninth Circuit ruled in a case called Fields v. Palmdale School District that a parent's right to control the upbringing of their children ends at the school door. And this is a law that public school administrators are all too familiar with. Homeschooling gives parents the power to take back their God-given and constitutional rights. It gives them the power to raise their children in a healthy community, physically, psychologically, and spiritually. It gives parents flexibility and affords protection for their children from a corrupting worldview. In his book, Tortured for Christ, Richard Wurmbrand wrote about parents under Romanian communism who dared teach their faith to their children. If this was discovered, their children were actually taken away from them. But today, we willingly give our children away to forces who are actively corrupting them through the public schools. Now, there's no question that for most parents, choosing to homeschool will require significant personal and financial sacrifice. But this begs the question, if we're not willing to sacrifice for our own children, what are we willing to sacrifice for? In the book of Genesis, God declares, "For I have chosen him, that he may command his children and his household after him to keep the way of the Lord." And in John's third epistle, "I have no greater joy than this, to hear of my children walking in the truth." Well, when it comes to education, there's simply no better way to help our children walk in that truth than by providing an education where kids are receiving consistent truth with others like-minded, rather than in an environment that is trying to supplant parental values at every turn. Well, I hope this has been helpful. If you have a question that we've not covered here, please feel free to reach out to us using the Contact Us link on our website. One question, though, that always seems to come up is, how long does homeschooling take? What kind of time commitment's required? Well, obviously that depends on the age of your children and their grade level. But if you're just starting out, kindergarten shouldn't take any more than 90 minutes a day, 4 days a week. Now, obviously, as your kids grow and mature, that time commitment will increase until the kids begin to work autonomously, which usually occurs sometime during middle school. By high school, you'll find yourself acting more as an administrator than a full-time teacher. But again, if you have more questions, please do reach out to us. As the father of now 2 homeschooled children, I can tell you that it was a richly rewarding experience that my wife and I wouldn't have traded for anything. And our experience has been echoed by countless others. So I hope you'll prayerfully consider homeschooling as an option for your family. Regardless, I want to thank you for spending time with me, and I do wish you all the best in your educational journey. I'm Mark Schneider for Protect Our Kids.